SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation. SLT Mobitel Fiber, the fiber of the nation.
රෝස සුවඳ තවත් දෙකු කලක් රැඳෙන්න ඩබල් පර්ෆියුම් ලුක් සමගින් එන බෙස්ට් එවර් සන්ලයිට් රෝස්.
Tonight, power of the jab. UK study confirms the value of booster in combating Omicron.
No matter what your backbone, whether you had Astra or Pfizer, you've got a 70 to 75% vaccine effectiveness for a symptomatic disease.
Meanwhile, the health minister is adamant on keeping unvaccinated people at bay. Alternative strategy. TNMP Sumandiran buoyed by Western world's interest to work with India in securing a lasting political solution in Sri Lanka. The Pandemic Handbook. Bangladesh explains how they countered the COVID-induced economic downturn.
Our leadership faced the pandemic head-on, and importantly, the pandemic was not politicized.
Indian investors, meanwhile, are still keen on Sri Lanka.
Indian investors are so familiar with Sri Lanka that they have not been deterred.
All that and much more coming up on First at 9. This Saturday, the 11th of December, 2021.
නැවුම් කුළුබඩු 12ක එකතුවකින් no biryani mix restaurant රසට බිරියානියක් දැන් ගෙදරදීම.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, welcome to First at 9. I'm Dhammike Kanayaka. Now then, a study in the United Kingdom has shown that the booster dose can raise vaccine effectiveness up to 70 to 75%. This data reaffirms the preliminary data provided by Pfizer-BioNTech, which say that the booster dose was able to significantly raise immunity. Now, amidst all these developments, Sri Lanka's Minister of Health, Keheli Rambukwala, is adamant that unvaccinated people should be kept away from public places, even if it means action against them. The minister insists that lives cannot be jeopardized owing to the whims of a few.
With 3 weeks gone by since the Omicron variant was first detected, preliminary data on its effect against vaccines are now available. They point towards the possibility of the variant being able to evade immunity induced by vaccines following the two-shot regime. However, Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine manufacturers have stated that even though this might be the case, a booster dose has proven to be able to restore a significant level of immunity. Similarly, another study conducted in the UK has reaffirmed this conclusion.
After 2 doses of vaccine, particularly more than 3 months after your second dose, there's a much reduced vaccine effectiveness against symptomatic mild infection in the community. What that means is that people who've had 2 doses more than 3 months ago are likely to get infection and transmit infection. What we see is after the booster dose, and that happens quite fast after the booster dose in early analysis, probably at 14 days and even up to just even 7 days, that effect is reversed. And actually what we're seeing is no matter what your backbone, whether you had Astra or Pfizer, you've got a 70 to 75% vaccine effectiveness for a symptomatic disease.
In the meantime, Sri Lanka too has raised its priority for booster dose administrations. Yesterday, health authorities announced that boosters will be made available to people over the age of 20 from today. So far, health authorities have been able to administer 1,184,455 booster doses to its population.
ලෝකයේ බොහෝ රටවල් වල නැති පහසුකමක් අපි මේ රටේ ජනතාවට ලබා දාලා තියෙනවා. මේ වෙනකොටත් අපි විශ්වයෙන් වැඩි සෑම කෙනෙකුටම තුන්වෙනි එක එන්නත ලබා දෙන්න පවා අපි සූදානම්ින් සිටිනවා. ඉතින් අපි කියනවා ජනතාවගෙන් මේක ගන්න කියලා. මොකද හේතුව අපි විශ්වාස කරනවා මේ එන්නත තුලින් තමයි කොවිඩ් වසංගතයේ බේරුම සහ ඒක මූණ දෙන්න හැකියාවක් තියෙන. අභියෝගයට මූණ දෙන්න හැකියාවක් තියෙන. ඒ නිසා අපි මේ වෙනකොට නීතිපතිවරයාගෙන් උපදෙස් ලබලා තියෙනවා. අපිට වැක්සිනේෂන් එක අනිවාර්ය කරන්නට බෑ. හැබැයි අපිට එක දෙයක් කරන්නට පුළුවන්. සම්පූර්ණ වැක්සිනේෂන් එක නැති අයට පොදු ස්ථානවලට ගැවසීම සහ පොදු වස්තුවල පැමිණීම තහනම් කරන්න පුළුවන්. අපි ඒ දේ කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා හෙට අනිද්දාම. මොකද කාට හරිත් කියන්න පුළුවන් තමන්ගේ ජීවිතය අයිති තමන්ට ඒ නිසා මම කැමති නෑ වැක්සින් එක ගන්න කියලා. ඒකට අපිට අභියෝග කරන්න බෑ. අපිට කරුණු කියන්න විතරයි පුළුවන්. හැබැයි ඔහුට හෝ ඇයට අයිතියක් නෑ තව කෙනෙක්ගේ ජීවිතය අනතුරට දාන්න. ඒ නිසා පොදු ස්ථානවලට පැමිණෙනවා නම් සම්පූර්ණ වැක්සින් එක අරගෙන තිබිය යුතුයි. එසේ නැත්නම් පොදු ස්ථානවලට පැමිණීම අපි නීතියෙන් තහනම් කරනවා. එතකොට ආයතන හිමි කරවන උදාහරණයකට ගත්තොත් ගත්තොත් සිනමාවකට සිනමාවේ හිමිකරුවා වගකීම බාර ගන්නට ඕනේ. ඒ දේ හරියටම බලලා මොකද දැන් අපි ඇප් එකක් හදලා තියෙනවා. QR කෝඩ් එකක් තියෙනවා. බොහොම පහසුයි තප්පර 10යි යන්නේ. රජයක් හැටියට අපිට කරන්න පුළුවන් සියලු දේ අපි කරලා තියෙනවා. දැන් තියෙන්නේ පුරවැසිය යුතුකම. මම ආදරෙන් ඉල්ලා සිටිනවා අපේ ජනතාවගෙන් වැක්සින් දෙකම ගන්න එක තියෙනවා. තුන්වෙනි එක ගන්න මේ වෙනකොට සියල්ලට විවෘත කරලා තියෙනවා.
India, meanwhile, is adopting a different strategy. Despite Omicron being detected in the country, their health authorities say that the number of cases is just 24, which is less than 0.04% of total variants detected. They also say that all detected positive cases of Omicron in India have mild symptoms. It is reported that India has not considered authorizing booster doses, as many in the country have been naturally infected, and the government believes 2 vaccine doses offer sufficient protection for now. That means the booster isn't a priority for India.
Our emphatic view is also aligned with the same approach that let's complete the task of vaccinating every adult with 2 doses.
The Sri Lanka Navy today intercepted a foreign vessel in international waters carrying more than 250 kilograms of heroin. 6 foreign nationals were apprehended by the Navy in the process. It is also reported that the drugs haul was sent from Dubai, with 2 traffickers in Sri Lanka being the intended recipients.
The Sri Lanka Navy has launched an operation in the international waters south of Sri Lanka. It was the result of a tip-off following days of around-the-clock surveillance. The operation, launched with the assistance of the Police Narcotic Bureau, the special operation led to a drug bust. The Navy intercepted a foreign vessel about 900 nautical miles south of the island. When the vessel was searched, 225 packets of heroin from 9 sacks were found. As per the Navy, the drug haul weighs more than 250 kilograms. At the time of the interception, 6 crew had been aboard the vessel, 5 Pakistani nationals and 1 Iranian. According to reports, the haul of heroin had been sent by a drug trafficker in Dubai, with it being intended for 2 traffickers in Sri Lanka. Reportedly, the Dubai-based drug trafficker had been in contact with the vessel's crew at the time when the naval officers boarded the vessel. The 6 suspects are due to be handed over to the Police Narcotic Bureau for further investigations once they are brought ashore. The Navy said that the vessel in question will be towed to the seas of Colombo either next Monday or Tuesday. Today's bust comes at the heels of several similar incidents within the last 6 months. On the 30th of August, a local multi-day fishing vessel was seized with 290 kilograms of heroin on board by the Navy. Then in September, the Navy also intercepted 2 foreign fishing vessels carrying over 506 kilograms of heroin during 2 separate operations. There are concerns in the region that drug smugglers are using Sri Lanka as a narcotics transshipment hub. There are concerns in the region that drug smugglers are using Sri Lanka as a narcotics transshipment hub.
The global spiritual leader of the Dawoodi Bohra community, His Holiness Dr. Syedna Mufaddal Saifuddin, met with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa and Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa today. During his audience with the head of state, the government's COVID control program had come under praise.
His Holiness Dr. Syedna Mufaddal Saifuddin, the worldwide spiritual leader of the Dawoodi Bohra community, called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's private residence in Mirihana this morning. While noting that his followers reside in many countries such as India, Pakistan, the US, UK, Canada, Sri Lanka and Australia, His Holiness Saifuddin has noted that he is happy to be visiting Sri Lanka as a country he is quite fond of. He had pledged to revisit the country with his followers in the future as well, and had also praised the government's COVID control program. While expressing gratitude for the contribution His Holiness Saifuddin made to the Itukama COVID Fund, President Gotabaya had also appreciated the Bohra community's contribution to the country's economy through business and investments. In the meantime, His Holiness Dr. Syedna Mufaddal Saifuddin had also met with Prime Minister Mahinda Rajapaksa at the Temple Trees and held talks.
Parliamentarian of the Tamil National Alliance, M.A. Sumandaran, believes that stopping the new constitution ever seeing the light of day itself would be a victory. In an interview, he also expressed hope for a greater involvement of the United States and other Western nations in working with India to secure what he called a lasting political solution in the island. While also insisting genocide did take place in the island, Sumandaran proposes a clinical approach, since proving intent of genocide could be a stumbling block.
Ilangai Tamilarsa Katchi parliamentarian Nimme Sumandiran believes that a full international accountability mechanism has to be pursued on Sri Lanka as plans for a hybrid system has not borne fruit, with the Sri Lankan government backtracking on the UNHRC resolution 30/1. In an interview with the Tamil Guardian, Sumandiran also called for expeditious provincial council polls before the arrival of a new constitution. He said, quote, "If that new constitution comes, it will be in the opposite direction to power-sharing arrangements. It'll be just a complete unitary state model, with Sri Lanka being declared as a Buddhist republic, etc. So even to stop that particular constitution-making process can be seen as progress. But if you have provincial council elections with even the diminished powers of the 13th Amendment, there are some powers relating to land, and if elected provincial council exercises those powers, then you can actually stop some of the procurement activities now," unquote. Further on the topic of power sharing, Sumandiran said, quote, "Our stance that it must be on a federal model remains. What I mean by that is that whatever power sharing arrangement that we agree to, the subjects that are given to the province must be supreme in respect of those objects and functions. The centre should not be able to interfere with that. They must have legislative power over that and executive power. The other, of course, in that whatever power that is devolved, the centre ought not to be able to take it back unilaterally or override it in any way," unquote. On the topic of alleged genocide in the island, the TNA MP was more cautious, saying proving such an act requires careful attention since international law requires intention to be proven when it comes to the offence of genocide. He stressed that they must never be in a position where no is given as an answer. Sumandiran noted, quote, "It is a tricky situation because we are talking about a structural genocide over generations, and then whose intention? It has to be clinically looked at, not emotionally," unquote. As for his hopes for the future in terms of US or international action and on Sri Lanka, Sumandiran said that international support is the only tool that's left. He said, quote, "Because in terms of getting anything democratically, we are numerically in the minority, and unless we convince the majority numbers, it's difficult. We should try that also. Because eventually whatever sort of comes and will be durable in the country, you must have substantial support from the majority community also. But to get it done, you need the push from the friends in the civilized world internationally. So there is some renewed hope that I have with interest being shown from the Western world, as it were, to work along with India in securing a lasting political solution for ourselves," unquote.
Now, the US State Department has banned 2 more Sri Lankan military personnel over alleged human rights violations. The State Department said that the relevant law under which the ban is imposed enables officials of foreign governments to be made ineligible for entry into the United States in cases where there is credible information that they have been involved in gross violation of human rights or significant corruption. We will see you shortly on the other side of this break. Stay with us.
Big 3.
Welcome back. You're watching First at 9. Now, the Minister of Trade announced today that certain goods will be sold at lower than market prices at Sathosa from tomorrow until the end of the year. Minister Bandula Gunawardena said that 50 types of goods will be sold at prices lower than market price at Sathosa from tomorrow. A kilogram of sugar will be sold at 125 rupees, while a kilogram of dal will be available at 240 rupees at Sathosa. He also noted that commonly used varieties of rice by the general public will be sold for less than 100 rupees. Two gunmen on a motorcycle today robbed a jewellery shop in Borella. Now, the suspects have absconded and the police have launched investigations into the incident.
2 gunmen on a motorcycle had robbed a jewellery shop in the area of Borella at around 2:30 this afternoon. The police said that the duo shot in the air to strike fear into the jewellery shop employees. The suspect's approach to the shop was caught on CCTV. The police believe that the two suspects have made away with jewelry amounting to a considerable value. After the heist, the suspects had fled. The relevant investigations are handled by the Colombo Crime Division.
The Bangladesh High Commissioner to Sri Lanka boasts that, among other measures, the Bangladeshi leadership did not politicize the pandemic and it enabled the country to withstand the shocks of the pandemic and gain control. His views came at the International Conference on Business Management 2021, during which the Indian envoy to the island noted that Indian investors aren't put off by Sri Lanka's present economic situation.
The two-day international conference on business management, organized by the Faculty of Management Studies and Commerce of the University of Sri Jayewardenepura, got underway on Thursday under the theme Managing in Crisis, Brace for Challenges Ahead to Ensure Sustainable Growth. The third and the final session of the conference was held yesterday, where the three High Commissioners of India, Maldives and Bangladesh to Sri Lanka addressed the conference virtually. The three envoys shared their views about the impact of COVID-19 on their economies as well as businesses.
Our apparel sector was indeed hit hard as foreign buyers cancelled their orders. But the remittance flow was not as affected as anticipated. After an initial hiccup, the remittance flow in fact increased largely due to the incentives declared by the government. Then it shot up. In fact, the remittance flow in 2021 fiscal alone stood at $20 billion, a record. So these increased inflow remittance kind of offset the impact of the pandemic. We have done pretty well in managing the pandemic so far. Bangladesh adopted a holistic approach. We put in place necessary policy frameworks based on WHO guidelines, and they form the core of our public health intervention. Our leadership faced the pandemic head-on, and importantly, the pandemic was not politicized. Within a week of the lockdown, the government rolled out a stimulus package of $13.25 billion. It helped the economy afloat. It ensured smooth supply of credit-affected sectors of the economy while preserving the financial stability. We ensured food security. We stabilized the commodity market. We have allocated significant amount of money for the returnee migrant workers. We significantly increased budgetary allocation for public health and vaccine procurement. We put in place an economic recovery financial plan. As a result of all these coordinated measures, the impact of the pandemic has been far less than feared. Crisis time calls for togetherness and partnership. It's the neighbors who are the fast responders to any crisis. So we should be able to build a cohesive neighborhood in this new normal.
Meanwhile, the Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka said that their investors are not deterred by Sri Lanka's current economic position, as the government of Sri Lanka has ensured a conducive environment for investors.
Comprehensive trade and economic ties between India and Sri Lanka have also, by and large, successfully navigated the challenges created by the COVID-19 pandemic. You would have all seen the large investments which are coming into Sri Lanka from India. Indian investors are so familiar with Sri Lanka that they have not been deterred by this condition. We are very happy that the government of Sri Lanka is very actively addressing the requirements of the Indian investors and to provide them with a stable, predictable environment for investment, in which these investments can not only prosper, but also create more employment, more prosperity for the people of Sri Lanka.
In the meantime, the High Commissioner of Maldives shared the country's experience on the impact, struggle and the overcoming of challenges faced by the tourism sector, which has also become a sector of concern here in Sri Lanka.
Maldives is extremely dependent on tourism. The tourism sector was the hardest hit. Fortunately, due to the stimulus package introduced by the government, we were able to minimize the force of the impact on the population. The government also announced an economic recovery plan, the ERP of the USD, $162 million in March 2020. This scheme included a loan scheme to support resorts, large and small businesses, and an income allowance scheme to support individuals who lost their jobs and faced salary reductions.
Oil prices rose slightly yesterday and posted their biggest weekly gain since late August, with market sentiment buoyed by easing concerns of the Omicron coronavirus variant's impact on global economic growth and fuel demand. The Brent and US West Texas Intermediate crude benchmarks each posted gains of about 8% this week, their first weekly gain in 7, even after a brief bout of profit-taking. Brent futures settled up 73 cents at $75.15 a barrel after falling 1.9% on Thursday. WTI rose 73 cents to $71.67 after sliding 2% in a volatile session the previous day. An analyst said that oil traders are coming out of their shell shock and feeling more bullish as they celebrate or in fact recalibrate their demand expectations in the aftermath of Omicron variant of the coronavirus. Wall Street, meanwhile, advanced yesterday and the S&P 500 notched an all-time closing high as market participants digested an inflation reading that was in line with consensus, but also marked the largest annual increase in consumer prices in nearly 4 decades. Data showed that prices rose 6.8% in the year to November. The S&P 500 gained 44.20 points, going up by 0.95% to end at 4,711.65, while the Nasdaq Composite went up by 113.23 points to 15,630.60. The Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 216.24 points to 35,970.93. And that's it from all of us here at First at 9. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.